When Jalen Hurts was announced as the Eagles' second round draft pick, there was a lot of confusion and a lot of concern from the fan base, which was beyond understandable. What does this mean for Carson Wentz? What does this mean for the offense? Is there a long-term plan at quarterback? What exactly is a quarterback factory? Nobody really knew or had the answers. The biggest fear, I think, among many was what this meant for Carson Wentz, and that again was a very understandable fear, because at the end of the day, you could have the strongest relationship on the planet, and if you one day go out for dinner with a supermodel, your significant other is going to get suspicious regardless of how you position it. So after the NFL draft finished, I spent a lot of time trying to work out the motivations behind this move, and of course having a core backup does play a part in it. Nick Foles led the Eagles to a Super Bowl, very almost got them to another NFC Championship game, and of course Josh McCown got them in position to just stay in a fight against Seattle. But there's more to this, and I've spoke about that before, in the way that the Eagles have totally revamped their offensive coordinator position. Bringing in names like Rich Scangarello and promoting Press Taylor has given Doug Peterson a committee of very creative footballing minds. But there's one that really stood out that I wanted to dive into, and that is the mind of Marty Mornhinweg, someone that played a huge part in the Eagles' success during the early 2000s. When he took over the play calling for Andy Reid, he's finished with a top 10 scoring, passing and rushing offense 9 times, and in 18 years in the league as a coach or coordinator, his offense has been in the top 15 12 times in terms of total yardage. Now, his most recent stint was with the Baltimore Ravens during 2018, where they of course had drafted quarterback Lamar Jackson, someone that is now obviously an MVP, someone that broke the league in a way that only Michael Vick had done before him. In the last 7 games of his rookie season, Lamar Jackson averaged nearly 80 rushing yards per game and scored 4 touchdowns in the process. But for me, it's the games before that drew plenty of intrigue, because believe it or not, when Joe Flacco was on the field and was adequately performing, the Ravens were trying some very interesting concepts, and they were flirting with the idea of 2 passer sets, of having 2 quarterbacks on the field at the same time. And if you've been following this narrative for a while, you know that it's something that Press Taylor actually brought up last year, stating that he believes that could well be the future of the NFL. And when you look at teams like the Ravens, like the Saints with Taysom Hill, it's easy to see that there's some weight behind that. And let's not forget, Press Taylor was the one that pushed the idea of the Philly special under Doug Peterson's nose, so there's at least some intrigue there. Now, you bring in Scangarello, who implemented a lot of play action looks for Drew Lock at Denver, and you implement Marty Mornhinweg as a senior consultant, someone that helped field those dual quarterback sets. And what I wanted to do was get an idea of what we might see from this Eagles offense next year. Now, this isn't a guarantee. I'm not saying this will be 100% be copied and pasted into the Eagles playbook, but we may well see some of these concepts moved across from Marty's playbook into Doug Peterson's, having come from the same family tree at the end of the day. So buckle up, strap yourselves in, and get yourself a nice beverage. We are going to break down exactly what the Eagles offense may look like with Jalen Hurts in the fold. This is another episode of Eagles Film Room. Before we get started, it is important to contextualize what it is we're looking at. We're examining the first 9 games of the Ravens' 2018 season, where Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback and Lamar Jackson was sort of sprinkled in around 6 or 7 snaps a game depending. I mean, for instance, he ended up rushing the ball 27 times over that span, passing it a total of 11. So in terms of production, we're not really too fussed. We want to see how he's being implemented and how the Ravens toyed with these dual quarterback sets. Let's start off with his first actual NFL snap, because it sets a really nice tone. This was against the Buffalo Bills early in the first quarter, and the Ravens are going to come out with an inverted wishbone or a diamond formation, however you want to refer to it. And basically, you've got 2 tight ends in the backfield with a running back behind the trio. The obvious problems of this for a defense is that you have no idea where the ball is going, especially with someone as dynamic as Lamar Jackson in the backfield. It's also worth noting that Jalen Hurts ran a lot of these similar concepts during his time at Oklahoma. But back onto this play specifically, what we're going to see are the 2 tight ends bleed out as blockers towards the play side. That's going to leave Lamar Jackson with essentially a read option to see what those linebackers do and how they react to it. This play didn't exactly work out beautifully for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson kept the ball ball himself, but the Bills sniffed this one out an absolute mile away and were able to crash down into the pocket, avoid the tight ends who may have been looking to chip block, and just barrel down on the rookie quarterback. However, let's fast forward a few games into his career and they run a very similar look against the Carolina Panthers. It's the exact same thing, only this time Jackson can take the ball outside as opposed to going up the middle. When defending this look, you typically see man coverage on the outside and a single safety over the top. So if they are going to man up, technically that tight end should be able to take out the strong side linebacker from the play, allowing Jackson an open alley to run, and that's exactly what we see here. The defensive end crashes the tight end, and this opens a wide open alley for Jackson to tear through in a similar way which we'd be used to seeing Jalen Hurts do at Oklahoma. This in itself is huge for the Eagles. Why, you may be asking? Well, let's just take out those tight ends for a second and replace them with both Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Let's take out the running back and replace him with Miles Sanders, and all of a sudden, what the hell do you do from a defensive standpoint? The second trend to watch out for is a wide receiver who is not a wide receiver. He's just some weird placeholder, and that man is oddly Joe Flacco, who appears at the top of every formation that Lamar Jackson seems to take a snap at as a rookie. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a quarterback draw like we see on this play or whether it's a designed pass, but Flacco seems to occupy that space as a wide receiver, seemingly eliminating one side of the field and forcing defenses in a one-on-one choice with Lamar Jackson. The most fun by far was when Flacco himself was under center, because they would do things like this and bring down Lamar Jackson on a pitch play, which could obviously then be transformed into a run or a pass, and that's exciting to think about with both Wentz and Hurts in the backfield. Look at the flow of traffic here when Jackson gets that ball. Now, he recognizes it, turns around, tries to make a pass the other way, but it doesn't work. But the idea that you can manipulate a defense so easily with another athletic quarterback is very exciting. This play is really interesting. Lamar Jackson starts in the slot, motions to the other side of the formation, and is going to run a screen look and opt as a swing option for Joe Flacco. Now, he isn't targeted here, and Flacco runs the reverse and throws the ball the other way, but imagine if he was. You've got one-on-one matchups there with a receiver on a DB on that side of the field, with Lamar Jackson behind them and a single safety. That just seems too easy to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but that feels like a mismatch in heaven, and somehow the Ravens didn't capitalize on it. They didn't do that every time though. There's a great pitch here to Lamar Jackson, who's just going to run right round the other side of the line of scrimmage, but he does get tangled up by the Steelers defense, who pretty much see that one coming. Of all the defensive challenges they faced that season in this span, I feel like the Steelers definitely gave them the most headache, and there wasn't many places for Lamar Jackson to go outside of an offensive lineman that was facing him and not the defenders. But these sweeps very much became a staple of what the Ravens tried to do with two quarterbacks, because look at the attention they draw. Every single defender's eyes is pretty much on the backfield and where Lamar Jackson is. That allows Flacco to go to the opposite side, and unfortunately, the pass is incomplete. There's another example of a similar concept here against the Steelers, and this time Lamar Jackson actually gets open and Flacco doesn't go his way. It's so annoying. Like, that could have easily been a big time touchdown. It's not, it's an incompletion. But we now know the impact that Jalen Hurts could have as a second quarterback on the field in terms of a passing aspect, but what about the impact it would have for a man like Miles Sanders? Let's look at this play here. It's a simple option look, but TJ Watt comes flying down into the path of Lamar Jackson, which opens up a huge hole for Alex Collins. And I mean, let's be honest, TJ Watt isn't stopping for anyone when his heart is set on something. Lamar Jackson fakes that very, very well, and look at the distance that Collins can carry that ball as a result. Some people are wondering why the Eagles haven't signed a veteran back, and it's like, well, if you can get them in open space, I don't see why Boston Scott could be shifty between the tackles to do just that. I still think they'll sign one, but at the end of the day, if you can cause that much manipulation and force those holes open behind an offensive line as athletic as the Eagles, someone like Boston Scott, someone like an Adrian Killins or a Michael Warren may just be enough to get that job done. Now, I absolutely love this play because Lamar Jackson sells that outside rush so well. He hands the ball off, and you can see that linebacker gets so lost in the shuffle. It's a great block by the tight end, but Jackson's ability to sell that run outside opens up the middle of the game for the running back. Of all the looks though, this was by far the most fun. Alright, we're gonna see Lamar Jackson lined up on his own here. And look down the bottom of the screen, okay? You've got Joe Flacco at wide receiver with an offensive lineman begging for the ball because it's a one-on-one matchup, a lineman versus a corner. Could you imagine if you replaced in Alex Lewis and Joe Flacco with Brandon Brooks and Carson Wentz? It would be a thing of beauty to see Carson Wentz, or if you don't want Wentz outside, do it with Jalen Hurts. Put Jalen Hurts outside there with someone like Isaac Seumalo. It would be unbelievable. Now again, I don't think all of these ideologies will transfer to the Eagles offense. There's examples here of Lamar Jackson doing a simple bootleg, trying to pass it and it's incomplete. And there were several of those instances where as a passer, several of them passed him by. Now in the end result for the Ravens, that wasn't the end of the world. But from an Eagles perspective, I don't think Jalen Hurts will be expected to come in and make some throws again. Maybe if you're up by 40 or down by 40, but outside of that, you can use him on these tricky looks. Just 2 or 3 a game to keep defenses honest. And I especially love that wishbone formation, that inverted wishbone, because you can do so much with it. And I think that with those 2 tight ends in Goddard and Ertz, you could have a blast and really force some tricky looks. And even better, if you know it's a single high safety and you know you've got guys like Deshaun Jackson and Marquise Goodwin outside, just run a play action, keep those tight ends in the backfield, block for Carson Wentz and get a speedster open against a single safety. The Ravens did a great job in 2018 of keeping both quarterbacks on the field. If Joe Flacco's lined up on the same play as Lamar Jackson, you really don't know who's throwing the ball. Are they going to pitch it? Is it going to be a reverse? Is it going to be a screen? And yes, Flacco at wide receiver doesn't exactly present the matchup of nightmares, but with both quarterbacks on the field and you replace Flacco with Carson Wentz, it certainly does. It adds a little bit more danger into the equation when you consider the other skill positions that will be lined up on that offense. With Goddard and Ertz at tight end, with Jackson, with Rager, with Marquise Goodwin, with Hightower, with Miles Sanders, with Boston Scott. The list never ends. And we know the Eagles thrive on RPO looks and play action and getting these guys outside. If you just want to add a little bit of spice to that playbook, if you just want to change things up a notch in a 3rd and 3 or something like that, just to keep the defense honest, just inject a little bit more explosiveness into it. And when you can do this and pull off a 22-yard zone rush behind a prolific offensive line, why wouldn't you? I know that Lamar Jackson is a different beast to Jalen Hurts, but we can't forget that Hurts had over 1,200 rushing yards alone last year, and the Eagles would be very, very wise to capitalize on that. So I want to know what you guys think. Has this video maybe changed your perception of the drafting of Jalen Hurts? Could we see a few plays a game where Hurts is in the offense, locked and loaded to do some damage, or is this all just a big conspiracy theory where I'm looking way too deep into it and really need sports to hit my screens again soon? I don't know, guys, but thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. We will have a 20k Q&A coming up tomorrow, so if you leave your questions below, we will get them answered. Your support means absolutely everything to us. We wouldn't be here without you, and I cannot wait to keep grinding out Eagles content. From myself, Liam Jenkins, we'll see you next time.